Israel has now claimed that top IRGC commander Mohammad Saeed Izadi, who armed Hamas for the 7th of October attack on Israel, has now been eliminated in airstrikes. The killing marks the latest elimination of Iranian high-level commanders by Israeli forces. So who exactly was Mohammad Saeed Izadi? Now, Izadi was the commander of Palestine Corps of the Quds Force, a key coordinator between Iranian regime and Hamas. He is considered one of the main orchestrators of the 7th of October massacre in Israel. He was responsible for military coordination between senior commanders of the Royal Guard Corps and the Iranian regime, with key figures in Hamas as well. Izadi led efforts to smuggle weapons, provide funding and train terror groups in Gaza and the West Bank. As a part of his role, Izadi was responsible for increasing the financial funding from Iran to Hamas for terror activities against Israel. During the war, he was also responsible for directing Hamas forces operating from Lebanon. And since then, he has been committed to rebuilding Hamas's military wing and ensuring that Hamas remains in controlling authority of Gaza. Now, the latest news comes even as Iran and Israel exchanged fresh attacks early on Saturday, a day after Tehran said it would not negotiate over its nuclear program while under threat, and Europe tried to keep peace talks alive. The development come as US President Donald Trump on Friday said that he may support a ceasefire, but depending on the circumstances. Tensions began early in June on 13th when Israel attacked Iran in what it said was aimed at preventing Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons, an ambition Tehran has denied. The attack has raised alarms in the region that have been on the edge. The entire region has been on the edge since the start of Israel's war in Gaza in October of 2023. All right, joining us on the show is Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni. He's a defense and geopolitical expert. Lieutenant General, I have to ask you, how significant is the killing of Saeed Izadi? We now know that many top commanders of the Iranian forces, the IRGC, have now been killed. But as of today, the man who was responsible for really orchestrating the attack in Israel on 7th of October, one who coordinated that attack between Hamas and Iran, is also dead today.
Thank you, Shweta. You know, Israel has all along been wanting to target the top-notch military advisors, commanders that Iran has had amongst themselves and as part of the proxy, whether it was Hamas or whether it was Hezbollah. Primarily because they were the ones responsible. Why do you think there's a war between Russia and Ukraine? Because Russia didn't want Ukraine to be a part of NATO and someone so close to them as their enemy. And therefore, Israel has been telling again and again that Iran keeps claiming that they have nothing to do with Israel, they're doing nothing, but they created proxies as neighbors to Israel and constantly, enmity, which resulted in what happened on the 7th of October 2023, rejuvenating all these terrorist organizations. Sayed, the post commander, not only for financing, brain, how to do it, moving from Gaza to Lebanon, then creating those agencies in Hezbollah, ensuring all of it. At no point of time, no country, definitely not Israel, is going to accept this kind of proxies fighting in and around Israel. And therefore, Israel has been targeting in Iran all the commanders. Now we find that virtually there's none in Iran that can claim to be organizing, coordinating anything. So you find all these difficulties popping up there. Not just the military commanders. You find the top nuclear scientists all eliminated. You find military installations, military production units, the nuclear installations, all of them destroyed. Air defense, all radars destroyed. Primarily to incapacitate Iran from attacking Israel. But what is Iran doing in return? Sending missiles on Israel. Israel is a small country. It is 75 times smaller than Iran. So any missile from Iran onto Israel will ensure that civilians are killed, some military installation will be destroyed, but everything is all close and combined. Hence, you find that this kind of a retaliation, until and unless Iran is sort of done away with what the Israelis fear, that they have a nuclear installation, that their nuclear facilities must be eliminated, I don't think Israel will look back, because the entire skies of Tehran are in the hands of, of Israel. Israel has total air supremacy, air domination. What can Iran do at that point of time? So the least that Iran does is keep firing. And you find the interceptors are also finding it difficult now. The interceptors in Israel, comprising of the Iron Dome, comprising of the David Sling, comprising of the Arrow system, each at 70 kilometers, 300 kilometers, 2,400 kilometers, also seem to have some kind of limitation, resulting in some of these missiles from Iran coming on to Tel Aviv. Therefore, destruction in Haifa, destruction in and around Tel Aviv. So there is destruction going on, but positively, far more
So,
in
you know,
Iran, and therefore
so
the
when
elimination.
you assess the destruction so far, Lieutenant General, when you assess, the fact that Haifa, buildings in Haifa have been destroyed, when you look at the attacks that have taken place in Tel Aviv, the fact that Iran has also targeted and retaliated by targeting Israeli nuclear facilities, and when you put that in perspective of the higher and the better infrastructure that Israel has at the moment, would it be fair to say that Iran is giving Israel a good fight?
You know, whether we call it a good fight or at least Iran has been able to keep Israel on their toes. I'm sure Israel never expected, and Israel has never ever suffered since 1948 till date the kind of destruction that it is suffering now. A very prosperous country with all of its resources, with all the Iron Dome, it spends over $300 billion per night to protect its citizens. So you can imagine the kind of money, the loss, the amount of almost $1 billion spent by Israel
Absolutely.
the firing of protecting its citizens. And therefore, Iran is definitely making the cost go higher for Israel. There's no denying the fact. But Iran is not able to protect its assets. And the only protection that it has been able to do on the nuclear installations are primarily because at Fordo and certain places are deep down. And Israel has no such military equipment which can destroy that, because it requires bombs by B-52, which America has, and those also are, bombs have to be almost 30,000 pounds weight and explosives in it. And therefore, that kind of a thing, Israel has not been yet been able to hit so
Right.
hard, neither is Khamenei hit. But if that happens, then of course, but right now, what you are saying is right. Israel is definitely feeling the heat of the
Absolutely.
Iranian desire.
All right. So that brings me to my last question, sir, before I let you go. Where do you see the war ending, the possibility of the war culminating? Because so far, Iran continues to deny that it will mediate or wants to mediate with Israel. Israel is unrelenting. It is not stopping in its attacks on Iran. Where do you really see the war coming to a full stop, given that both the countries are absolutely sure that they want to continue attacking each other, not ready to sit at a negotiating table?
See, the war right now are between two, the interceptors and the missiles. Who has more and who can defend itself? As long as Iran has missiles, they will continue to fire. They had reliable sources did say that they had about 5,000 of them in number. The production of it may have stopped right now because of the kind of destruction caused by Israel. But out of 5,000, presuming that they're fired even about 3,500, even if about 500, they're still left with about 1,000, 1,500. Even if they're able to fire about 200 or so per day, they are not going to let loose about at least another 8 to 10 days. And now you know why America is saying that they're going to sit back tight for 2 weeks to see what happens. Interceptors. America has given enough of this equipment going down to Israel right now. Hopefully, as long as Israel can defend itself, it is perfectly fine. Because Iran is unable to defend itself right now, other than keep firing at it. They're just firing at Israel is to keep, make Israel a little more defensive as to whether they vote. But I don't think it will come to that an easy end unless until Iran throws in the towel and says enough is enough. If Khamenei dies or he's assassinated or he dies a natural death or something like that happens, only then Iran may give it up. But otherwise, I
Extremely
doubt
unfortunate.
Iran unless
Right.
it fires this last missile on Israel.
Well, so that's very unfortunate, sir. If until Khamenei dies, he dies a natural death or is assassinated, looks like the war is likely to continue with neither of the two parties ready to sit and talk. It does look like peace is not going to be forthcoming anytime soon in that region. Thank you very much, Lieutenant General, for taking time out, for putting this very crucial international story into perspective for our audience. Now, Iran has fired a barrage of ballistic missiles at Israel on Friday as well, setting off alarms across the country. At least 30 people were wounded by Iranian missile strike in Israel's port city of Haifa on Friday, including one person who was in serious condition and two moderately injured. Ambulances transported injured to Ramban Hospital in Haifa. Now, footage from Haifa captured the moment an Iranian missile hit a building as the conflict between the two nations entered its 9th day on Saturday. Israeli emergency response teams gathered outside the building damaged by Iranian missiles. Searches are still ongoing in buildings near the impact site. Israeli media said that initial report pointed to Iranian missile impact in Tel Aviv, in Negev, as well as Haifa. Earlier on Friday, Iran launched a barrage of missiles at Israel, striking near residential apartments, office buildings and industrial facilities in the southern city of Beersheba.
हाइफा शहर लगातार ईरान के टारगेट पर रहा है और पहले दिन से ही यहाँ पर हाइफा को टारगेट करके लगातार मिसाइल हमले दागे गए हैं और हम एक के बाद एक लोकेशन पर जा रहे हैं। इस वक्त TV9 की टीम हाइफा पोर्ट के पास मौजूद है। मैं एक बिल्डिंग की छत पर खड़े होकर यहाँ से टॉप एंगल आपको वीडियो दिखा रहा हूँ और ताकि आप देख सकें लाइव तस्वीरें इस वक्त हाइफा पोर्ट की। और इसको देखकर आप समझ सकते हैं कि ईरान की तरफ से जब 3 दिन पहले ये कहा गया था कि उन्होंने अपने मिसाइल हमले में हाइफा पोर्ट को ध्वस्त कर दिया है, तो वो दावा सही नहीं है, क्योंकि इस वक्त TV9 के कैमरे पर आप लाइव तस्वीरें देख रहे हैं और इन लाइव तस्वीरों में आप हाइफा के इस विशाल पोर्ट के एक बड़े से हिस्से को मैं दिखा रहा हूं। अब मैं कोशिश भी करूंगा कि बाद में मैं इसके दूसरे साइड में भी जाकर वहां से भी आपको तस्वीरें दिखाऊं, लेकिन यहां से मोटे तौर पर अगर आप देखें तो आधे से ज़्यादा पोर्ट जो मैं अभी दिखा भी पा रहा हूँ, इन सब में लग रहा है कि सब कुछ ठीक है, कोई डैमेज की चीज़ें नहीं दिखाई दे रही है। जो एक बड़े से पोर्ट की सभी फीचर्स हैं वो सब यहाँ पर मौजूद हैं, जबकि ईरान की तरफ से जो एक सरकारी वीडियो जारी किया गया था उसमें तो यही दिखाया गया था कि ये हाइफा पोर्ट जो है वो जलकर खाक हो गया है, लेकिन ये बात सही नहीं है, बल्कि सच्चाई यही है जो इस वक्त आप TV9 के कैमरे पर देख रहे हैं। और TV9 की टीम हाइफा पोर्ट पर मौजूद है और वहाँ पर मौजूद रहकर आपको एक एक तस्वीर दिखा रही है कि देखिए इस पोर्ट के एक बड़े से हिस्से में यहाँ पर सैकड़ों गाड़ियाँ लगी पड़ी है। इसमें से बहुत सी गाड़ियाँ नई होगी जो कहीं दूसरी जगह के लिए ट्रांसपोर्ट की जाती होगी। वहीं एक बड़ा सा शिप दिख रहा है मुझे, कंटेनर शिप है लेपर्ड नाम से। और इसके अलावा अगर आप देखें तो पोर्ट में जो डॉक पर अलग अलग शिप हैं या फिर जो दूसरी और तमाम इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की जो चीज़ें हैं वो सब यहाँ पर साफ तौर पर दिख रहा है। हम सबको पता है कि हाइफा पोर्ट का इंडियन कनेक्शन क्या है और इंडिया का इंटरेस्ट क्या है, लेकिन इन सब के बावजूद आप ये एक चीज़ देख सकते हैं कि ईरान की तरफ से लगातार इस जगह को टारगेट करने की कोशिश की गई। अब ये कितना महत्वपूर्ण होगा इसको आप इस रूप में देखिए कि मैं यहाँ पर आपको दिखाता हूँ। सबसे बड़ी बात यह है कि आप देखिए कि जो कल शाम में कुछ घंटे पहले अटैक हुआ था वो अटैक कहाँ पर हुआ था और वहाँ से पोर्ट की कितनी दूरी है। रोहित, जरा जल्दी से एक इधर आइए और मैं आपको दिखाने के अभी थोड़ी देर पहले हमने अपने दर्शकों को एक ऊंची बिल्डिंग दिखाई थी जहाँ पर एक गवर्नमेंट बिल्डिंग को अटैक किया गया था। देखिए मैं छत पर खड़ा हूँ, ये है हाइफा शहर और इस हाइफा शहर की ये है वो ऊँची बिल्डिंग। रोहित, जरा इस बिल्डिंग को दिखाइए। देखिए अभी हमने अपने दर्शकों को दिखाया था जब कुछ घंटे पहले ईरान के मिसाइल इस ऊँची बिल्डिंग और ये जो क्लॉक टावर के ठीक बीच में जो वो ध्वस्त हुई 2-3 मंजिला इमारत है जो सरकारी बिल्डिंग है उसको टारगेट किया गया था। मतलब वो पोर्ट के एकदम करीब में आकर यहाँ पर टारगेट हुआ था। और यहाँ पर ये है हाइफा शहर जिसको लेकर लोग जो है सो परिचित हैं, लोग देखना चाहते हैं हाइफा शहर की स्थिति क्या है। देखिए अलग अलग जगह पर अटैक हो रहे हैं, लेकिन इन सब के बावजूद सबसे बड़ी बात यह है कि जब हम यहाँ से आपको दिखाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं हाइफा पोर्ट को, तो हाइफा पोर्ट की तस्वीरें आप देख लीजिए। हाइफा पोर्ट में इस वक्त जो नज़ारा है, जो यहाँ के सूरत हाल है, वो हम अपने कैमरे पर टॉप एंगल एक ऊंची बिल्डिंग के छत पर खड़े होकर यहाँ से दिखाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। इसके पीछे हमारा उद्देश्य ये बताना है कि ईरान और इजराइल के जंग में जो सूरत हाल है, ईरान और इजराइल के जंग में इसमें कोई दो राय नहीं कि ईरानी मिसाइल इजराइल के कई महत्वपूर्ण जगहों को निशाना बनाने में कामयाब हो रही है। लेकिन बहुत से दावे ईरान की तरफ से जो किए जा रहे हैं वो भी सही नहीं है। बहुत से दावे ऐसे भी हैं ईरान के जो सही भी हैं, और इन सब के बीच तहकीकात करते हुए हम एक के बाद एक लोकेशन पर जा रहे हैं। वहाँ से हम आपको दिखाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि इस जंग की कीमत क्या है जो इजराइल भी चुका रहा है, और उसमें से एक महत्वपूर्ण जगह ये हाइफा शहर है। जी।
So both sides paying the price of that war. There seems to be no sign of de-escalation in the week-long Israel-Iran conflict as both sides are trading strikes at one another. 10 Iranian missiles were launched towards Tel Aviv, damaging a building in Holan and mosques in Haifa, 90 kilometers north of Tel Aviv in a latest attack. The barrage that Iran fired at the Israeli capital saw shrapnel sparking fire on the roof of an apartment building. And not only that, shockwaves from an Iranian missile strike in downtown Haifa, Israel, on Friday also caused major damage to a historical mosque, the Al Zarina Grand Mosque, and the nearby structures, as per the local media. The missile strike shattered the stained glass windows and damaged structure at the Al Zarina Grand Mosque, a stone structure which was built, in fact, way back in 1775 and expanded in 1901. One person, whose identity was unknown, sustained minor injuries outside the mosque. The mosque was undergoing renovation. In addition to Al Zarina, windows were also blown out at the Masjid Al Sehgir, a mosque built in 1761, although no additional visible damage was observed from the security cordon in place as per the Times of Israel. So two very important structures of the 18th century have also been hit as a result of Iranian strikes. And moving on, US President Donald Trump has now set a 2-week deadline to decide whether US will directly get involved in the escalating Israel-Iran war. The announcement, which came yesterday amid a significant military build-up in the region, with US aircraft and naval assets repositioning to bolster defenses and prepare for possible action. US bases across Middle East, which could support airstrikes against Iran, are also vulnerable to retaliatory missile strikes. In response, some forces have now been relocated, and access to the largest US base in the region, Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, has also been temporarily restricted for embassy personnel. Well, the Pentagon has also now deployed advanced fighter jets, including F-16s, F-22s, F-35s, and extended the presence of other warplanes to counter threats like drones and missiles. Meanwhile, additional US military assets, including the USS Nimitz aircraft carrier strike group and B-52 bombers, have moved closer to the Middle East, signaling heightened readiness as the situation unfolds. Washington's next move will now be closely watched as the world awaits Donald Trump's decision on the possible US involvement. And Iran on Friday said that it would not discuss the future of its nuclear program while under attack by Israel, as Europe tried to coax Tehran back into negotiation and the United States considers whether to get involved or not. Israel said it had struck dozens of military targets, including missile production sites. A research body said now Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi also said that there was no room for negotiations with US until Israeli aggression stops. But he later arrived in Geneva for talks with European Foreign Minister, at which the Europe hopes to establish a path back to diplomacy. US President Donald Trump said on Friday he was unlikely to press Israel to scale back its airstrikes to allow negotiations to continue. Speaking to reporters after his plane landed in Morristown in New Jersey, Trump said he doubted European negotiators would be able to secure a ceasefire. The president added he would not discuss potential use of ground forces in Iran. And amid the ongoing conflict between Iran and Israel, IDF Chief Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir has said that Israelis must prepare for a prolonged campaign against Iran to eliminate a threat of this magnitude. This remark indicates a quick end to the campaign is unlikely. Zamir clarified that Israel launched its attack on Iran knowing that Iran possessed around 2,500 surface-to-surface missiles with a high production rate, and such that within approximately 2 years, they were expected to possess about 8,000 missiles. Now, India has begun evacuating its citizens from the war-torn zone of Iran and Israel under Operation Sindhu. A flight from Mashhad in Iran carrying about 290 Indian students, mostly from Jammu and Kashmir, landed in Delhi late on Friday. Indian nationals evacuated from Iran expressed their happiness on their safe return to India. They raised slogans of Vande Bharat, Bharat Mata Ki Jai, and some even got emotional. The evacuees include students, religious pilgrims, professionals. All were returned under Operation Sindhu. Among those on board were students from Delhi, Haryana, Karnataka, and West Bengal. In an extraordinary move, Iran opened its airspace exclusively for Indian flights to evacuate its students stranded in the country amid its hostilities with Israel. Another flight carrying Indians arrived at the Delhi airport from Turkmenistan on Saturday early morning at 3. So far, 517 Indian nationals have been brought back home under Operation Sindhu. An estimated 1,000 Indians are expected to be evacuated soon. Ministry of External Affairs launched Operation Sindhu last week in response to the deteriorating security situation in the Middle East region. On Thursday, 110 students had already returned to India via Armenia and Doha.
बहुत ज़्यादा हम परेशान हो गए थे, दहशत में थे, लेकिन गवर्नमेंट ने हमारा बहुत साथ दिया और हमें सेफली अपने वतन पहुंचा दिया।
इंडिया की सरकार ने हमारी बहुत हेल्प करी है। हम लोग फंसे हुए थे, हम लोग को बॉर्डर क्रॉस करने में बहुत हेल्प करी है। और यूपी की सरकार ने भी हेल्प कर रहे हैं, हमें अपने घर तक पहुंचवा रहे हैं, तो काफ़ी हम लोग थैंक यू करना चाहते हैं उन लोगों का।
The Indian embassy in Iran said that the embassy will make efforts to evacuate citizens of Nepal and Sri Lanka as well. The embassy noted that the efforts will be made at the request of the government of Nepal and Sri Lanka. The Indian government launched Operation Sindhu, as I mentioned earlier, to evacuate Indian nationals from Iran given the situation as a result of the ongoing conflict between Iran and Israel. Meanwhile, Ministry of External Affairs official spokesperson Randhir Jaiswal said that so far about 517 Indian nationals have returned to India from Iran under Operation Sindhu. It is pertinent to note here that it is not the first time that Indian government has launched an operation to evacuate citizens from another country. From Operation Kaveri back in 2023 to Devi Shakti and Rahat earlier, the Indian government has ensured safety of its citizens wherever and whenever they were in precarious situations. And the latest that we have as a part of the Ahmedabad air crash, the DGCA has now finally acted against Air India amid the outcry from various circles over the airline's callous, apathetic attitude towards the safety of its passengers and maintenance of its aircraft. Sources say that the Directorate General of Civil Aviation directed Air India to remove 3 senior officials from the roles related to crew scheduling and rostering. Safety concerns around Boeing 787 aircraft have been in focus since 12th of June Ahmedabad crash, which killed about 275 people. Responding to the directive, Air India acknowledged the seriousness of the observation made and said that it will comply with the order. In a latest, a leading daily reported that a hissing sound emanated from a shaking door on a Boeing 787 Dreamliner, which was en route from Delhi to Hong Kong. Passengers on board the Air India flight had a harrowing time after the door of the Boeing 787 started shaking and making hissing and growling noises. Surprisingly, the Air India flight attendants plugged paper napkins into the thin gap at the top of the door, pushed it to seal and quieten it, as published in the newspaper. And this is not just a lone case of a Boeing 787 having a door issue mid-flight. At least 3 other instances were also recorded by airlines in the recent times. In October of 2022, an American airline Boeing 787-800 flight to Paris returned to Philadelphia after fumes were detected around 2 of its doors. In February 2022, a TUI airline B787-800 flying from Amsterdam to Punta Cana in Dominican Republic returned to Amsterdam after howling noise came from one of its doors. A small hole in the door seal caused the sounds, and the pilots decided to divert the flight. In August of 2019, a Japan airline flight from Tokyo to Bangkok landed back in Tokyo 2 hours after departure, since it heard growling sounds and vibrations were coming from the main door towards the front of the Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner, according to reports. Now, the Boeing 787 Dreamliner aircraft has been in the limelight in the recent past following the plane crash, the emergency return of the Gatwick-bound Air India AI-171 that crashed fatally on 12th of June, in which all passengers on board, crew members except for one, lost their life. More than 30 people on ground also died. The total tally of those who died in that crash currently stands at about over 270.